Hi everybody and welcome to chapter 20 on communities and ecosystems. So we're rolling right along with our ecology part of the semester where we learned about the interactions between different organisms. Now we're going to get into the interactions with the organisms and other species as well as the environment itself. So remember that a single individual species would be a population. So say here we're looking at this picture. If we were talking about the populations of the lions, we're just talking about the lions, right? That would be the population of lions. If we're talking about the zebras, it would be the population of the zebras. If you talk about all of those different species, the zebras and the hyenas and the lions and the buzzards, that would be a community. Remember the community, this takes us way back to the beginning of the semester where we're talking about the differences between a population, a community, an ecosystem, etc. So make sure that you guys remember that. So again, we have a population that would be just the lions. If we have a community, we're talking about the population of lions, the population of buzzards, we're talking about all of those different species. So the lions, the buzzards, the zebras, those are all a community. Now, if you actually include the environment itself, meaning how much rainfall you get, how much, what the grass is like, the type of plant life that's there, when you're actually talking to soil composition, the temperature, that's kind of thing like that. That's actually including the environment. And now that would be the actual ecosystem. So, single population, just your population of lions. Community, you have your lions and your buzzards and your zebras and your whatever else is here, hyenas, right? That's your community. If you take all of those different animals and you include the fact that they're in the savanna, right? That means that's the ecosystem level. Okay, so all the different species that live there plus the environment itself. Now remember that plants are organisms, right? They are living organisms. So that's not the environment. Those are just individual plant species or plant community, right? So you have to talk about the environment, and the environment would be how much rainfall you get, average temperature. Remember, this takes us back to chapter 18 where we learned about all of those different biomes, right? Remember the biomes, like the desert biome, the broadleaf forest biome, all those different biomes, right? That's the ecosystem, okay? Not just the plant species that there, because those are organisms. We're actually talking about the environment itself. So with all those different species and the environment, that actually gives you your ecosystem. So we're going to be talking about a variety of different ecological terms that you should hopefully remember from some of our other ecology lectures. One of them that I would like to remind you of is what's called biodiversity. So biodiversity, bio means life, diversity means, differences, like how many different ones you have. So when you're talking about biodiversity, you're talking about the different living organisms, right? And you always in an ecosystem want high biodiversity. We're going to talk about why that is because of, things like food chains and food webs and stuff like that. Because if you have lots of different organisms living in a certain area, if one of them disappears due to whatever natural disaster or human impacts, it's not going to ruin your entire ecosystem, right? If you only have a handful of organisms live there, maybe taking one of them out, the whole ecosystem would fall apart. But we're going to learn about that in just a little bit. But first, we're going to talk about what can actually cause decreases in biodiversity. So there's, the usual suspects. We have things like pollution, right? We have things like habitat destruction or what's called fragmentation, meaning what was one big piece of land we've now broken up into little bits. And maybe they can't be, connected anymore for the animals. Not for us, but for the animals, right? Maybe you're a tiny little, mouse and you're trying to get across the highway. You're not going to get across that highway now. So that has caused habitat fragmentation. Habitat destruction, we just tear things down, like the destruction of the rainforest, the destruction of the coral reefs, all of those different things we're destroying, and we're destroying, lots of different ecological habitats when we do. Invasive species, again, we talked about this in last week's lecture, but invasive species don't just invade an area because of natural causes, they invade the area because of us. We are the direct reason that they're invading said area. Remember, they came over in the ballast water of the ship, right? And then we let that ballast water out in the new harbor, and now you have things like invasive mussel species and stuff like that cudgrass that we were talking about. Overexploitation, that is just something that we're really, really good at. We take, and never actually think about the consequences of what we're taking, or if we even need that much. I can tell you when it comes to seafood, There is so much waste when it comes to seafood. We just pull things out of the ocean, we throw it on ice, we try to sell it, oops, it went bad, toss it. So that now fish or crab or shrimp or whatever died for nothing. We're not getting those nutrients. We're not getting those energy. That energy transfer is the whole point of this, right? Now that dead, rotting carcass gets thrown in the trash, nobody gets that energy. That energy is essentially lost. Now our decomposers are going to get that energy eventually and stuff like that. But when that fish could have lived in the ocean and it could have had many, many more offspring and lived many, many more years, we took it and we didn't even do anything with it. So overexploitation is a big, big problem, and it's something that humans are very good at doing. And then pollution, again, our good friend pollution, just does so much damage and destruction on ecosystems. Remember we talked about the San Francisco Bay, where they're dumping things like PCBs and DDTs into the bay. I mean, they were doing this in like the 50s and 60s. They haven't done it since. But 60 years later, 70 years later, that's all still there. All of those PCBs and DDTs and those nasty chemicals, they're all still there. They're just sitting there. They're not going to go anywhere for a really, really long time. So pollution, man, terrible. All right, let's go into each one of these in a little bit more detail. So we already talked about habitat destruction and habitat fragmentation. Remember, habitat destruction, you just destroyed it. You cleared off the rainforest because you need the wood. Now, every single thing that was dependent on that tree or those roots or the bush or whatever is gone. That whole ecosystem is completely gone. Habitat fragmentation, again, it's kind of things like you can see right here. We're kind of using parts of these hills and parts of these mountains to actually, develop on. And therefore, we're breaking up what was a big natural area. We're breaking it up into smaller little fragments. Same thing like here. This was a natural river running causeway, right? That probably flooded this whole area. Now you have these cute little houses that are living on them because the people like to live near water. But what you don't have is that causeway, those waterways that are now interconnected, they're separate from each other. So no marine species, no freshwater species is going to be able to get over that road. So now you've basically fragmented up their environment. So it can cause lots of really bad things. We are trying to work on some of this fragmentation that we've already caused. I think some of the next slides we're going to see that, but we're trying to get around this. But now that we know, and again, you only know if you study the ecology of these organisms. Once you study the ecology of these organisms, then you can understand where they're at, where they're going, how they're moving, and then you can see, is that road actually affecting them? Is it not affecting them, or is it affecting them? Etc. All right, so invasive species, we kind of already talked about this in the ballast water, can be very, very bad. Did we talk about this in your class? Maybe, I don't know. Well, we're talking about it now. All right, so invasive species is a non-native species that has basically invaded an area. So they're not normally able to travel huge oceans or cross country or, across this mountain range. They wouldn't normally be able to get there. But thanks to us, remember those rats that we talked about getting off the boat? And now that's why the East Coast has so many rats. Because that's where all the ships landed first. Same kind of thing. They don't have any predators. They didn't evolve with the ecosystem. So normally, as a prey species, or just any species, comes up in numbers, there's going to be somebody who's going to try to eat them. Because now there's a whole bunch of this resource. Okay, so if a species actually evolved with the ecosystem, they would evolve natural predators, or somebody who could decrease their population. Even the funguses, if there's too many of a single insect, we already learned about that in the funguses, the fungus species will jump up and be like, cool, I'm going to start eating that insect because there's too many of them. So something to keep in mind. Now, these invasive species can't get there on their own. Again, we're facilitating all of this invading. And once they get there, it's really hard to get rid of them. So it's really hard to get rid of a newly established organism because you know nothing about it in this new ecosystem. It's never been here before. So you have to basically start from scratch, which can, cause all sorts of bad problems. So they compete with the native species and sometimes out-compete the native species. So the native species that used to live there and lived there forever, potentially gone. They might eat the native species. So it's not that they're competing with the native species. They're straight up preying upon them. They're eating them. And potentially could, because again, the native species didn't evolve with this new invasive species with them. So they're like, I don't even know what you are. And you're like, crap, I just got eaten because I don't even know what you are, right? Because they're new to the environment. They don't know to be weary of something like that. So sometimes they can just wipe out a population because they're eating them. And sometimes they parasitize them, right? Normally, organisms have these kind of immune system ways of dealing with parasites and infections and stuff like that. But if it's totally foreign and new, we have no immune system against it. We have no way to get rid of that, or even for our body to prevent it. So, you know, they can eat them, they can parasitize them, they can infect them, they can do all sorts of really nasty stuff. So invasive species, not good. Oh, the one that breaks my heart probably the most, overexploitation. Here's a man standing on a pile of bones. In fact, skulls. Skulls of bison, I believe. This was taken in the 1800s. This is just the skulls of how many bison there used to be, how many buffalo there used to be roaming the Great Plains of the United States. That is ridiculous. Like how, and this is talking about in the 1800s. There wasn't even enough people for all that meat. There wasn't even enough anything for all of this resource. Why are you taking so much? And again, because these bison didn't really know anything about the people with guns, right? So then they would just start shooting the bison. The bison would drop. So essentially, as technology gets better, we collect faster and more. And the animals can't adapt to anything like that. They are essentially at the mercy of how much we want to take. So things like seasonal closures, hunting seasons where you can only hunt during part of the year, fishing seasons where you can only fish during a certain part of the year is crucial to actually maintain these organisms over long periods of time. Otherwise, we just keep take because we're greedy. And again, most of those things don't even ever get utilized. This isn't a tribe of Native Americans who are taking one buffalo to feed the entire tribe and then using all the bones and all the fur and all the everything. We're taking their skulls for trophies and then whatever. You know, like the shark finning. We take their fins and then throw them back into the water alive to the point where they can no longer swim and then they suffocate to death because we wanted some soup. We don't even use the whole shark. We just fins. So overexploitation is a really, really big problem with humans. We want everything right now and as much as we want it. Mentality really is not sustainable. Like our selfishness is not sustainable. So these are things that we have to think about going into the future. And hopefully things that you will kind of make yourself aware of. It's not just one person doing this. It's everybody. It's this whole mentality that we have of just take. Because we're what, owed it? We're just another organism on this planet. We're just another species. No one species deserves anything more than any other. So, yeah. All right, pollution. Pollution, again, is another big ticket item, obviously, because it's a big problem. We're constantly out there polluting. We're releasing the CO2 in the environment. That CO2 mixes with seawater and creates bicarbonate acid. That basically is just causing ocean acidification. So not only are we polluting chemicals like the DDTs and the PCBs that are just sitting in the sediment in the San Francisco Bay for years and years and years, polluting everything that swims by. Plastic is a huge problem. I can tell you right off the bat, straws, yes, getting rid of straws, big deal. It is super important. They're small, they're thin, they get places. That poor turtle had one stuck up. It's horrific. But that's not actually the biggest plastic problem that we have on the planet. The biggest plastic problem that we have is single-use cups, water bottles, and single-use plastics, right? So all single-use plastics. We've gotten rid of the grocery bags. That's a start. But it's the single-use water bottles, the single-use coffee cups, the single-use everything. We need to stop using these single one-time use for our convenient things. I know at the lab that I work at, they keep styrofoam cups. People grab one styrofoam cup, they fill it up, they take a sip, they throw it away. And they're doing this several times a day, every single day that they're at work, year after year after year after year. I mean, that's a big pollution problem. It's a big plastic problem or styrofoam problem or just So don't pollute. Please don't pollute. Try to recycle. Try to do everything that you possibly can to, decrease your waste, essentially. All right. So not only are we polluting with the plastics and the oceans and all that, we're actually polluting the air. Acid rain is a thing. I'm sure that you guys have heard of acid rain. It was in cartoons when we were all kids. It would melt your clothes off. It's real, and it's still happening. This is a picture of a nice healthy forest in 1963, right? Big green, lush, thick forest right here. This is the same exact picture 20 years later, in 1983. And what you can see is this yellowing, this browning everywhere, all along the hills, these like dead patches right here. That's because of acid rain. In the 60s and the 70s, we were just polluting like crazy. Even until the 80s, we were just polluting like crazy. Thinking, oh yeah, the planet's fine, we can just do whatever we want. We cannot. We started to see these big, drastic changes in the environments. And it's all because of us. There's no acid rain normally. And even if it is, you're talking about slightly acidic. We're talking about enough to burn through plant cells. That's kind of a big deal. Like, that does never happen naturally, nor would happen naturally. You know, slight acidic, sure. Very acidic, extremely acidic, no. That is all just because of air pollution that we're doing. So, luckily right now, everybody's still stuck in quarantine, or we're reducing our emissions. We're reducing going outside and stuff like that still. The canals of Venice are full of fish again, and dolphins and jellyfish. The air above LA for months was the cleanest air like in the entire United States. We're a coastal city. We have constant airflow from the desert and from the beach. We should always have good air quality. But we're out there constantly driving our cars, constantly doing all these things and releasing CO2 and pollution into the air. Bad stuff. So not good. In 2007, there are things that we can do about this. In 2007, in September, what they basically did is they did a global cleanup, and they said, hey, let's just arrange this global cleanup, and let's try to do whatever we can to make the world a better place and just to clean up some of the pollution that we have. And they picked up 6 million pounds of trash in one day. And that was 13-something years ago. 6 million pounds of trash? That's like a pound of trash for every single person in this side of the hemisphere. Like, it's good. They're just so bad. So anyway, this is why I always offer beach cleanups as extra credit and stuff like blood donations. It's good karma. It's good things for the environment that we should be doing every single day. Little by little, it really does make a difference. Every time I go to the beach, I make sure to pick up a few items of trash. Even if they're not mine, pick up a few items of trash away from that beach, prevent it from getting into the ocean, and then staying there for thousands of years. And I really do mean thousands of years, because welcome to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. If you didn't know it existed, it absolutely does. So right here we have the North Pacific Gyre. So anything above the equator is going to be rotating in a clockwise fashion. That's just the rotations of the earth and the winds. This is how it goes. So floating in this gyre right here, we have the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is essentially, I think now, the size of Texas, of just garbage, a floating island of garbage. And most of that is plastic, and most of that plastic is not going to go anywhere for hundreds of years. It's going to get in the sun. It's going to slowly break down into smaller and smaller pieces. Those smaller and smaller pieces are going to float around and get eaten by fish. Those fish are going to get eaten by you. And guess what? They're now, scientists believe that every single organism on the planet, just about, asterisk, has some microplastics inside of them. You have microplastics inside of you. So the next time you think about taking that Starbucks cup and just throwing it out your window when you're getting onto the freeway, because for whatever reason, the side of freeway on-ramps is just a huge trash source, think about the fact that plastic might end up in your food and then in you. And guess what? Your body's not going to be able to deal with it. Your bodies don't know how to naturally get rid of plastic. Plastic is designed not to break down. So inside of you, guess what? It's not going to go anywhere. Like those PCBs and DDTs, they're just going to sit there. So keep that in mind next time you go pollute somewhere. Anyway, we're coming up with creative ways to get around this. It's like a multi-billion-dollar idea if you can actually figure out how to get that Great Pacific Garbage Patch out of the ocean. One, it's in the middle of the ocean, so it's expensive to get to. Two, it's expensive to try to haul off. How do you collect that kind of trash, that kind of amount of trash? And nobody's willing to fund it just because it's expensive. So we do have to figure out other kind of alternative ways to get this problem down, and one of them we're looking at biologically. So this is a plastic-eating moth right here, and you can see he's not great at it. He's just a little moth larvae, but he is eating the plastic, creating these little tiny holes. So potentially we can actually start harvesting, and we can start maybe modifying these little moth larvae to eat plastic to get rid of our plastic pollution. So any kind of biological organisms, they can take that non-digestible plastic and actually use it or start to break it down. That's going to really be the future and the wave of getting rid of these huge numbers of plastic. One, we just need to stop using plastic. We need to start moving to more like recyclable plant material or something that has a natural breakdown shelf life instead of thousands of years from now or 800 years from now. So yeah, we're working on it. Scientists are working on it. So if this is something that interests you, it is a big deal. It is a big issue, and somebody will pay big money if you can actually come up with a good idea for this. So, just a thought. All right, but let's get away from the problems and the decreases of biodiversity, and let's actually focus on the communities and the ecosystems that we talked about. So remember, we do have all of these different species in this picture, including the plants. That is a community, right? All the different living organisms in that area are considered a community, okay? When you talk about the community and the environment itself, now you're getting to that ecosystem level that we talked about. So speaking of these different types of organisms, let's talk about how they can interact with each other. We know how same species are going to react with each other, right? They're going to compete over the same the same resources, right? You're a squirrel, I'm a squirrel, we're the same species, we're going to go after the same type of nut, right? It's competition. I'm a squirrel, you're a squirrel, we're going to go after the same type of mate. That's competition. But in between different species, you can get lots of different interactions, and that's what we're going to talk about now. So the first one that we're going to be talking about, and these are all called symbiosis, or living together. Not always good, right? Symbiosis just means living together. It's not always, hey, we're symbionts, we're good. It could be, hey, we're symbionts and you're a parasite, right? That's a bad thing. All right, so let's talk about the first one. The first one is a lose-lose. Now, this is typically between similar species or the same species. We have those squirrels, we're competing over the same nut. This is a lose-lose scenario. One of us is going to get the nut, one of us is not, or, you're going to hoard some nuts, I'm going to hoard some nuts. We both get less nuts than we would have, right, if we weren't competing over the same resource. So anytime you have competition, direct competition, you're going to have that lose-lose, that negative interaction, right? You don't get enough food, I don't get enough food, we're working harder to get our food. It's just all sorts of bad. Plus is what's called mutualism, right? So negative is called competition. Plus is called mutualism. Mutualism is, it's mutual. We live together, but it's a good thing, right? We're both benefiting. So a classic example would be a clownfish and an anemone. So the clownfish gets the protection of the anemone, like Nemo, right? Nemo's hiding in the little anemone. The anemone stings everybody who comes by. Nemo's like, yay! Do you know what the anemone gets? Nemo's poop. Yes! I teach this in my marine biology class, but poop and dead bodies are a huge source of food in the marine environment. And as Nemo eats and swims all over that anemone, he's releasing his excess nutrients, and that anemone is nom 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 nom. So you're going to think about that next time you watch Finding Nemo. Also, fun fact about clownfish, they're sequential hermaphrodites, meaning they have boy parts and girl parts, but at different times. So really what would have happened if Nemo's mom had, Nemo being the only one and the smaller of the two, Nemo would have transitioned to a female and then he would have reproduced with his dad. I'm going to leave you guys to think about that for a second. Definitely going to watch Finding Nemo way different the next time. I know, sorry, I had to. But getting back to our competition, away from Nemo and his sex-changing habits, but now we're going to be talking about some plus-negative interactions, and there's a whole bunch of these. But usually what happens is one organism benefits and the other one is harmed. You can talk about things like predation, right? One of them gets food. The other one is food, so I'm pretty sure he's not happy. Herbivory, same kind of thing. One of them gets food, the other one gets eaten. Now, usually when it comes to herbivory, now the herbivore is not eating the entire plant, right? Usually just what's called grazing. So you're eating part of it, like grazing on the grass. You leave the roots to regrow so that grass will resprout and you'll have more food. But you just eat kind of the tops of the grass so that there is, again, more grass later that can grow. So that's, again, another plus minus. Parasitism, which we already talked about. One of them gets food. The other one has a parasite either living in it or on it or blah. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure he doesn't like, it's not healthy for you to have parasites all over your body. So yeah, plus negatives. Again, not not great for the one who's the negative, but good for the one who's the positive. So species interactions, sometimes bad for some organisms. Now let's talk about interspecific competition for a second. Now interspecific is in between different species. Okay, so you have right? This species and this species. Species A, species B. So if we were to look at them separately, the first graph we're going to look at them separately. So red and blue, we grew in separate cultures, say they're bacteria. We're say separate cultures. And they both start out slow, right? This nice exponential growth until a point, and then logistic growth, right? That S curve that we see, where they reach a carrying capacity. True of most species, right? They reach that carrying capacity, they can't grow anymore. The population, not obviously the organism. Now, when we combine red and blue together, what you can see in the beginning is blue actually starts to do better because maybe blue grows faster, reproduces quicker, who knows, right? So blue actually does way better than red in the beginning, but at a certain point, red starts out-competing blue. Now, red does really well and reaches carrying capacity. Blue might be driven to extinction. And we're talking extinction localized here in this particular culture, not like world global extinction. So in this case, this is one of those lose-lose. This is a competition, right? So red's not doing good in the beginning, but ends up okay. Blue's okay in the beginning and then ends up not so good. So again, when they're separate, they do much, much better. They both reach a carrying capacity. But when they're combined together, you have this very unique dynamic. And again, that's interspecific competition. Two separate species are competing with each other for the same resource, or in this case, space, which is a resource. It is the same resource. Now, here's a cool competition video that I can't wait to show you. I have been having some issues with some of my videos and copyright issues. They're like, you can't make money off our video. I don't want to I'm already making money off these videos. They're already paying me to teach this class. But I want to make sure that you guys actually watch these videos. So hopefully this one will work. If I have to pull it, you'll get the link. And then please, please, please go see the link, especially with this one. I really do love this video. So without further ado, I'm going to show you guys competition between crabs and how they don't get that lose-lose scenario. Okay, guys, that was crab competition, hermit crab competition. And again, to avoid that lose-lose scenario, they're not directly competing with each other. They understand if we do this in an orderly fashion, if we line up in an orderly fashion, we are not going to die, right? Everyone is going to be able to get the shells that they need, and everyone is going to be able to survive. If we directly compete, there's going to be a lot of non-survivors, right? A lot of losers. So that's not what we want. And then the crabs are even smart enough, despite the fact that their brains are like this big, to know that if we all compete, we're going to lose. Someone's going to lose, and that's going to be bad. So that we should avoid competition. Now let's talk about that plus again. Here's a really classic example of a plus, besides the anemone fish that I gave you, which is bees and flowers, right? Flowers need to sexually reproduce. They produce pollen, they have those seeds, right? They need to actually get the fertilization, but plants can't move. They can't go, hey, I'm going to go down the street and fertilize my neighbor. It's not how that works. So what they do is they rely on pollinators. These pollinators are going to fly. They're going to eat the nectar that the flower provides them, and then they're going to go from flower to flower to flower. They're going to be releasing the pollen to each one of them when they do. So this is very mutualistic. The bee gets food, the flower gets to sexually reproduce with someone not right next to them. Right? If you're right next to someone, you're probably closely related to them, or somehow you want to reproduce with someone who lives very far away from you. If you're a plant, obviously, not a person. I mean, maybe. You don't want to reproduce with anyone living in your house, probably. Unless you're already with that person. Anyway, okay, I digress. All right, let's talk about predation, right? This is going to be one of the examples of the plus-minus, right? The predator is the one who's eating. The prey is the one who's being eaten. This should not shock you guys, but just to define terms so we're all on the same page. So the predator is always going to be the plus. He's the one who gets the food. And the prey is going to be the minus. He's the one who got eaten. So because you're a prey species, so predators are like really adapted at catching their prey, because prey are also adapted at not being caught. So it's very, again, they've evolved together. The predators are like, I'm trying to avoid the prey. The prey's like, I'm trying to get that prey. So, did I say that right? Predator's trying to get the prey. Prey's trying to avoid the predator. There we go. So what they're doing is they all have these different unique adaptations to either catch your prey or to not be prey. So we're going to learn about some of them right now, and they're actually, a lot of them are really fascinating. So one of them is a type of camouflage called cryptic coloration. And if you're a cryptic species, what you're doing is you're kind of hiding in plain sight. You're going to pretend to be something that you're not. You're like, okay, I'm going to camouflage and I'm going to blend into the environment. Okay, so in this case, this is an animal? It is. Oh, it's a seahorse. You're like, what? There's no seahorse here. This is actually, you can see, because that's his eye right there. So this seahorse completely blends in with this, looks like a cnidarian. Okay, so the cnidarian is just living there and it's stationary. And the seahorse is like, I look like you, so I'm going to hide over here and you can't see me. Right? Totally blending. This is a camouflage. It blends into the background. Same thing right here. What's this? Just an orchid? No. It is a praying mantis hiding in amongst the orchid. So he kind of mimics a little bit. Mimicry is a little bit different. We're going to learn about mimicry. But this is cryptic, right? This is a type of camouflage. I'm going to blend into the background. I'm going to blend into whatever is around. Warning coloration is another one. This is a poisonous tree frog or a dart tree frog. Poisonous dart frog? Tree? Anyway. The reason they are poisonous is because they have these toxins in their bodies and they're like, don't eat me. If you eat me, you're going to get sick. And so what they do is, because if this little frog got eaten and the predator got sick, it doesn't help this little frog. The little frog's already dead. So being poisonous, he goes, hey, I'm going to also be brightly colorful. Because in nature, being brightly colorful usually means that you're poisonous or toxic. And so therefore the animal looks around and goes, what can I eat? Oh, you're really bright. You're probably going to make me sick. And again, this is kind of like an innate thing that animals learned, or it's a behavioral thing that animals learn. They'll eat a frog once, they'll get really sick. They'll never eat another one of those frogs again. They'll be like, look, you look just like that frog. No. I'm not going to get sick again because of that. So being brightly colored is kind of what's called a warning coloration. Nudibranchs, which are little shell-less snails, essentially, brightly colored. Butterflies, too. All of these things have kind of toxins or poisons in them. They're all brightly colorful so that they let anyone know, hey, don't mess with me. I'm bright for a reason because I am poisonous. So it avoids them being eaten by predators because predators know, hey, that made me sick one time. I'm not going to do that again. Chemical defenses are fun. Chemical defenses, again, are like, I taste really bad. I have a really foul odor. Anything like that. These are going to be chemicals like the toxins that are going to prevent you from eating. Do not eat me because I'm going to be toxic. I'm going to be poisonous. I'm going to be stinky. I'm going to be foul tasting. Anything like that. So these are all chemical defenses that go, look, even if you do eat me, you're not going to like me. So don't eat me. And again, this is going to be a learned behavior that animals get. You eat one of them once, you get really sick, and you're like, that's it. I'm never doing it again. Thing like that. And then eventually it just kind of becomes like an innate behavior with animals. Like, I just learned not to eat that generation after generation, which is kind of, innate behaviors are even cooler. You're born with this like behavior that you want to do. It's fascinating stuff. Mechanical defenses. If you don't have those chemical defenses, maybe you have some mechanical defenses like spines or spikes or armor. Any of these are going to be mechanically used to avoid predators eating you. You're not going to be able to crush my hard plates right here, so you're not going to be able to eat me. Why even bother? If you can eat me, good luck. You're going to get all these spines in your face and it's going to hurt a lot. So good luck trying to eat me. So again, these prey have evolved ways to avoid being eaten by these predators. Mimicry is another one of those. So this is another type of camouflage, but it's not so much I'm blending in with the background. It's I look like someone who's dangerous. Okay? So what we see right here is, I believe this is the dangerous one and this is the non-dangerous one. Or it's the other way around. I don't know because they look the same, right? Essentially, one of them is completely harmless, but the other one is venomous. So if it bites you, you will potentially die. So if you're an animal, you're like coming along, you're like, whoa, there's that stripy thing. I saw that Kill Bill. No, I'm not going to do Kill Bill. Bob, whoever. Yeah, that killed my friend. I'm not going to go near him. Even if it's the wrong one, you don't know, but you're going to stay away from it because it's mimicking someone that is dangerous. Okay, so I'm going to pretend to be that dangerous snake even though I'm not. And that's actually what we can see coming up in one of these. So mimicry is also really good. Not only are you pretending to be someone who may or may not be dangerous, but sometimes you're pretending to be something that's totally normal or just boring. Like, well, I don't want you. What is that? I don't even know what that is. Like this guy. This is actually a moth that pretends to be bird poop. Yeah, bird poop. So if you're a predator looking for a moth and you're looking around and you're like, well, there's poop, but I'm not going to eat that. I'm not a marine animal. No, I'm going to go look for a healthy insect. And the moth is like, I look like poop, but I'm not. Right? So he's hiding using this mimicry. He's pretending to be something else. Stick bugs, classic examples of mimicry. They're pretending to be sticks. You just look at them and you're like, yeah, that's a stick. That's not a bug. That's not going to give any nutrients. Oh, wait, it is. Right? Mimicry, pretending to be something you are not. Here's a fun one that I usually like to ask my class. Which one's the snake? Are they both a snake? Well, that's a snake. That is a moth larvae or a caterpillar larvae. It's one of the two. Yeah, this is essentially like a caterpillar. It's not going to be hurting anybody. It's certainly not a snake, but if you're a little bird and you're looking for a caterpillar and out from under a leaf comes those big eyes, right? You're going to be like, whoa, that's a snake that could eat me. I'm going to take off. Meanwhile, the caterpillar's like, ha ha ha. You could have eaten me, but you didn't because I'm mimicking a snake. I know. Crazy. All right, getting back to some things on predation. We've already talked a little bit about herbivory. If you were an herbivore, you're eating plants. Hopefully you learned all this in like elementary school biology, but if you didn't, here it is again. We are a type of herbivore. Some people are straight up herbivores because they're vegetarians or vegans or anything like that. Lots of different parts of the plants that we can eat. You don't have to eat the whole thing of lettuce. You can eat part of the roots like ginger. You can eat part of the modified leaves. Like spinaches and stuff like that. You get cinnamon. Cinnamon is just bark. Did you ever wonder why cinnamon comes rolled up? Because it's shredding bark. So essentially you're just scraping off layer after layer of bark. Yeah, but cinnamon is delicious. So we eat lots of different types of the plants. Usually we don't ever eat the entire plant. Usually we're only eating part of it. Either the fruit of the plant, the roots of the plant, the leaves of the plant, something like that. But yeah, herbivores. Oh, and I think I already mentioned this to you guys, but I'm sorry to my vegans or vegetarians out there if I haven't mentioned this to you yet. Plants know when they're being eaten, and they send little distress signals to other cells. So for you vegans out there who are like, I don't want to kill a living soul. I couldn't hurt anything. Sorry! This is the way of life. Everything eats everything. We're all animals. That's our goal. That's our goal in life. We have to eat something. But, you know, to each their own. If you want to stay a vegetarian, stay a vegetarian. But know that they are screaming in pain. No, I'm totally kidding. They don't feel pain like that at all. It's a sorry, messed up joke. But they do, you know, cells are communicating and they do send little distress signals. So just keep that in mind. All right, let's talk about parasites. We've kind of already talked about them briefly when we talked about our other lectures. But let's go into some specific parasites. Now, the parasite is the animal that's actually living off of the other individual. The other individual is known as the host. So if I had, say, a tapeworm living in my stomach, that would be gross, but I would be the host and the tapeworm would be the parasite. Just to define those two. And again, the parasite, super happy, he gets to live inside my stomach and eat all my fluids and totally is, and I have a parasite. So it's negative for me because I would probably get sick because I'm not supposed to have a parasite living in my stomach. So not always, you know, never good, actually, really, for the host. Always good for the parasite, never good for the host. All right, so just to review everything, competition is going to be a lose-lose, right? They're both competing for the same resource, and therefore, there's not enough of those resources to go around for everyone. So technically, everyone both kind of loses. Mutualism, win-win. Both species totally benefits. That's like the clownfish and the anemone. That's like the cleaner shrimp. You know, the cleaner shrimp are actually picking off parasites off of eels and stuff. Really cool videos you can totally see. I would normally show you guys in class, but they don't like me putting all these videos in my thing. Thank you, YouTube people. So please just go look it up. Like, honestly, there's so many of these really, really cool videos out there. We have some interspecific and intraspecific. Remember, interspecific is between two different species. This is technically specific if you're talking about the same species, but we're not going to get into that. Just worry about interspecific, in between two different species. You have the exploitation, or basically the predation, right? One of them is going to be eating the other one. You have herbivory, one is going to be the other one, but the other one's a plant. And then you have the parasite, one of them is sucking off the host. So just a little chart here on all of these different interactions that you will have to know. And yes, you will have to know them for your exam, but they're all pretty easy. All right, next thing we're going to be talking about is trophic structures. So we've talked a little bit about the base of the food web, or the food chain is what we call it. And that would be the primary producers. And all energy from our planet is coming from those primary producers. We learned that in photosynthesis, right? We can't synthesize our own energy. We can't make our own energy. All of our energy is coming from the sun. Okay, it comes from the sun, it hits the plants, the algae, anyone who's photosynthetic, and they turn that into usable bits of sugar. Then the herbivores eat the plants, we eat the herbivores, and then that energy is transferred up. So that's what's known as the trophic structure. Energy is being transferred from one organism to the other, always starting at the basal level, which means base level, or the primary producer level, or the first producers. Right? Those are your photosynthetic organisms, your algae, your plants, etc. Let's see. Now, when we talk about a food chain, that would be the plants being eaten by the herbivores, being eaten by the carnivores, right? That is a food chain. One goes to the other, to the other. Typically, when you draw food chains, and I'm not sure if we're going to have an in-class group assignment on this or not, in-class assignment on this or not, but check the Canvas site. If we do, then yes, you will have it, because normally in class, I have you guys do a food web, so I'll probably have you guys do one for homework as well. But check the Canvas site for that one. Okay, so what you usually do is you start with the producers. Again, the producers are producing their own nutrients. And then you make your way to the consumers. There's the first level consumers, second level consumers, third level consumers, etc. We're on that third level consumers. We're what they call a top predator or tertiary consumer. Technically, there's a quaternary, it goes to 4 levels, but we're going to just stick with 3 to simplify. So if you're a producer, you're producing your own sugars. If you're a consumer, you're consuming your own sugar. You're consuming outside sugars. Like, you're an eater, essentially. You eat someone. This is a really, really great video on trophic cascades and keystone species. I do absolutely want you guys to watch it. So I will provide a link for you guys right here for that one. Okay, so make sure you guys watch this video right here. It's really great on keystone species and trophic cascades and stuff. And it'll help you guys understand all this. But moving on, hopefully that video helps you guys. So let's get a couple examples. One terrestrial, one aquatic. Starting with the producers, and the producers always go on the bottom. So you can kind of think of this as like going upwards, right? So they always start on the bottom, okay? And then what you're going to have is the primary consumers or the first consumers. Usually the first consumers are going to be your herbivores, okay? The herbivores are eating the producers. Okay, then you have your secondary consumers. These would be your omnivores, your carnivores, something like that. They can either eat the primary consumers or the producers. Tertiary consumers, these are usually going to be your carnivores. They're eating the secondary consumers or possibly the primary consumers. And then your quaternary producers, which are pretty much eating whoever they want to, but usually they're going to be the carnivores, so they're eating these top level. So it's kind of working their way up from the bottom. Now, these food chains are great for showing what's going on, but is this the only thing that's going on in the ecosystem? No, not at all. So really what we see in the ecosystems actually looks more like this. And this is known as a food web. And we're looking at the terrestrial side right here. But you're not just one species eating one type of food. You're probably eating multiple types of food. And you're probably food for multiple organisms. So that's why a food web is always much more accurate than a food chain. Because you don't just have one prey and one predator. You probably have lots of different things going on. So it shows a more complete picture of the ecosystem. So you have multiple different primary producers, right? These are your plants. You have multiple primary consumers. You have multiple secondary consumers. And then you have multiple quaternary and tertiary predators. So this mouse is eating several different types of plants and insects. This insect is eating several different plants and being eaten by this grasshopper. This snake is eating these different rodents and these different rodents, right? So there are multiple organisms eating multiple food sources. And that's why, again, a food web is always going to be more accurate. Now, I should point out that for your homework, if we do this, you always want the arrows pointing towards the mouth. Okay, so the plant, the arrow goes up. Let's do the mouth. The plant goes here. The cactus goes to the mouth of the chipmunk. Okay, so what you can read it as is the energy from the cactus goes to the mouse. If you had the arrow pointing the other way, what it would say is that cactus is eating the mouse. And that's not what's happening. Okay, the energy flows from the plants to the mouse. Once the mouse gets eaten by the snake, the energy flows from the mouse to the snake. From the snake, once it gets eaten by the hawk, it goes from the snake to the hawk. So again, the direction of the arrow always points from where it started to where it's going. The energy is going from the plant to the mouth of the chipmunk. From the chipmunk to the mouth of the hawk or whatever. So that's how you, again, do these. And again, you're always going to want your plants, your primary producers on the bottom. Your top predators are on the top, hence top predators. So that's how that goes. All right, so we've talked a lot about the community. We've talked about a lot about these different interactions. We've talked somewhat about humans and how they've impacted said communities. We've fragmented our ecosystem. We've destroyed our ecosystem. We've introduced, invasive species. We're just overexploiting everything. We're polluting everything that's left. We're just messing things up. But it's not the end of the world because we are working on making things better. So specifically what's called conservation biology, or a conservation biologist, is someone who goes out there trying to conserve what we have, right? We're trying to save the polar bears. We're trying to save the endangered rhinos. We're trying to conserve what we have. So conservation biologists are going out there and they're trying to do whatever we can. One way that they do this is through what's called restoration ecology. And restoration ecology is restoring the natural ecosystem, right? Restoring what we once had. We had this big, beautiful estuary, and then we bulldozed it and made it condos. Okay, restoration ecology would be bulldozing those condos and making it an estuary again. Conservational biology, again, making MPAs or marine protected areas that are like, no, we're going to conserve whatever here. You can't touch this anymore. Whatever's left here, you cannot touch. Again, so between restoration ecology and conservation ecology, we're basically trying to maintain what's left and restore whatever we can, bring back the numbers of whatever we can. So these are two really, really amazing aspects. I consider myself a behavioral ecologist or a conservational ecologist. Because again, I'm trying to spread awareness about conservation and about these things and important issues like shark finning and stuff like that. To spread awareness, to hopefully inspire people to want to conserve these things and to stop the shark finning industry and all that stuff. So these are our future goals. This is where we're going with society and, well, scientific society, hopefully. But unfortunately, this is also partly where we're having huge budget cuts. So a lot of people in the higher up governments are cutting this kind of funding because it doesn't make anybody money. Yeah, great. Well, your grandkids are not going to know what a polar bear is. They're going to be like, what? It's a white bear? I don't know. I see it on a Coca-Cola commercial. They're not going to really know that there were polar bears roaming around the Arctic. That's going to be really sad. So conservational ecologists know probably not a huge moneymaker, but really, really important for things like keeping biodiversity on this planet. It's going to be really boring if all the things that we have left on this planet of animals are house pets. Yeah, everybody loves dogs and cats and birds, but nobody's trying to go out there and save the axolotls and the polar bears and the salamanders and stuff like that. So things to consider in the future, guys. Things to consider in the future. Voting aspects and stuff like that. Look at your politicians. Look at what they think about conservation and ecology and stuff like that. So things to consider. Obviously, one of my favorite subjects. Oh, here's a really, really great example at the Santa Cruz Island. So if you want a local example of what's going on, definitely check out this video. I provide all the links for you guys. I please really hope that you guys watch them. It's a little bit long, so I'm not going to embed it into the video, but make sure that you guys go back and watch that. Definitely. All right, so the whole goal of conservation biology and restoration ecology and stuff is sustainability. And I'm sure you guys have heard that sustainability. It's a sustained fishery kind of thing or sustained game. That basically means animals that we can take in a sustainable way, meaning that if we take some now, there will be some left over. So again, things like closing certain fisheries during certain parts of the year to allow their populations to come back, closing hunting seasons to allow their populations to regrow, bag limits on everything, like catch limits on fish. You can only take 6 every time you go out. Those are considered sustainable practices. So this is something that we're going to be we're kind of like going towards right now. More sustainable things like that, like sustainable fisheries and stuff like that, like all sorts of that, like, farm raised whatever. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, there are pluses and minuses to getting wild caught versus farm raised, but we do need to shift things as a society, as a global planet. We need to shift things more towards the sustainability section of it. Can we take things now and forever? Right? If we're just take now, that's not going to last forever. Look at those bison. Essentially, the buffalo on the Great Plains are extinct. Like, there's just none left. And there used to be millions, if not billions, right? But we just hunted them, and now they're all gone. So that was not sustainable. That over-harvesting was not sustainable. So that's the whole point of this, is we're trying to get to the sustainability. We're trying to be able to maintain our populations, feed everybody on our planet, but keep all the other species that we have, keep them healthy, keep them alive, keep them in high numbers, and whatever resources that we take should be sustainable, meaning long-lasting. So that's where we're going. I really hope that we do get better at it. Again, you can be a huge part of the solution, or unfortunately, you can be a big part of the problem. So just keep these things in mind as you guys move forward in your life. I really just hope that I've inspired you guys to kind of keep an eye open and aware for some of these big ecological issues. So with that, I will leave you guys. Hopefully you've had a wonderful week. And stay safe, take care of your guys' self, and I will see you soon. Don't forget to check the Canvas site for any homeworks, quizzes, etc. Okay.